The National Cattlemen's Beef Association has always been an organization led by cattle producers, women and men who work together to address common challenges and to set priorities for the beef cattle industry. In fact, NCBA officers are volunteer leaders. They take time away from their home operations to serve the industry they love. Let's learn a little more about South Dakota's Todd Wilkinson, the man taking the reins as your 2023 NCBA President.
Although the town of De Smet, South Dakota is probably best known for Laura Ingalls Wilder, who wrote the Little House on the Prairie books, it's also home to Todd Wilkinson and his family, who together own and operate both a cow-calf and feed yard business.
My dad got us all into the ag business when we were very little. My first venture into the cattle business was actually as a 9 and 10-year-old feeding heifers through the winter, and they paid me with a heifer calf. And from that, I built the cow herd. We started our first feedlot back in the early 90s, grew it from there, and then built another feed yard and have since built another background yard. So the operation has grown. What gives me great delight is the fact that my son has grown into the cattle business, and now him and I run between 250 and 300 cows and then run a background in a finishing facility for Wilkinson Livestock.
In addition to his years raising cattle, Todd has also practiced law for almost 4 decades.
The area that I have developed a little bit of a niche for is pretty heavy ag-oriented and estate work. I work with producers in multiple states, dealing with some things that a lot of people would recognize, like CAFO permitting and trust and estate setups and succession planning for farmers and ranchers. The running joke in my family is I try to make enough money on the law side so I can lose it on the cattle side. Sometimes there's more reality in that than not, but it's been a good marriage for me in terms of being able to bring assets to our operation that allow us to grow.
Over the years, Todd has been heavily involved in local, state, and national leadership roles, including serving as president of the South Dakota Cattlemen's Association. Having been a part of agriculture his entire life, Todd knew he wanted to have a voice in the beef industry's decision-making process.
If you run into me across the country, one thing that I will say time and time again is if you're going to be in the industry, don't just talk the talk, you need to walk the walk. And I have made it a commitment of mine to be very involved in trying to change the things that I feel need to be changed. And when I saw what can happen if you get both feet into it, I was committed, and I haven't looked back since. And I don't regret a minute of all the hours that I placed into it.
Now, Todd steps into his biggest role of all, president of NCBA, where he'll represent cattlemen and women all across the country.
I enjoy going into the different regions of the country, the different states, meeting new people, meeting new ideas. I'm literally taking the philosophy I'm going to put on boxing gloves. And I'm going to be swinging for the industry because I think that the regulatory challenges that we're going to face in the next couple of years are going to be daunting. I'm anything but a pacifist. You know, if this membership wanted to elect a guy that's going to be ornery, well, they've succeeded because that's how I'm going to approach things. And I'm going to bring the same level of passion that I bring to my involvement in this organization to trying to fight back and protect this industry from the people that want to put us out of business.
One focus for Todd during his time as president will be traceability, because he knows a foreign disease outbreak could devastate the beef industry.
I see traceability as not a negative. I see that as an insurance policy. Putting that tag in the ear of that breeding cow and knowing where that cow is to be able to identify it quickly in the event of an outbreak could save my cow herd. And I want to save my cow herd because that's the future of our operation. And every producer should be willing to do that to protect their herd. Don't look at it as a negative. Look at it as an insurance policy and the way to have some viability for the future.
Despite spending some time on the road in his role as NCBA President, Todd will continue his work with the South Dakota Cattlemen's Foundation to put on the Primetime Gala. This annual event raises money to provide beef to food insecure families throughout the state.
Coming up on the 10th year of that. Over the course of those 10 years, we have raised over $1.4 million, which is all going back to our Feeding South Dakota network. Goes out to all of the counties in the state of South Dakota, into the food pantries. And we made one stipulation on our gift of money, is that it has to be used to buy beef, and it has to go back in to feeding those that are at a food disadvantage. And it just highlights what we in this industry can do and the good that we can do if we all get behind a common theme.
It's clear Todd is committed to the beef industry, and he's excited to lead an organization like NCBA that brings together cattlemen and women to fight for common goals.
Part of the reason I'm doing this is to make sure that this industry is here for my grandchildren and their grandchildren, and that they have the opportunity to come back on this piece of ground and run cattle 100 years from now. So yeah, I'm passionate about NCBA. I won't back up an inch on my commitment to this organization. And I am committed, as long as I'm walking this earth, to be trying to make things a little bit better, and NCBA is one of those ways that I think I can do that.
Joining us now is the new president of the National Cattlemen's Beef Association, Todd Wilkinson. Todd, you said you were going to be a fighter for our industry. Why is it so important to take up this fight?
Well, Kevin, I think with the elections that just transpired, we're going to be into a major gridlock in Washington. And it appears what we're headed for is an administration that wants to regulate us out of business. So it's time that we maybe throw a left and a right and get into the fight.
So we just finished up the Cattle Industry Convention. Tell us a little bit about some of the key outcomes from that convention.
Well, one of the highlights was the fact that we have an organization like NCBA that fully recognizes the importance of disease traceability. You know, that the fact that we have taken so long to do this, it's important we get it across the finish line. And for us to be able to keep our herd safe and to be able to identify issues right away is just critically important. And then some of the other issues, you know, we always talk about WOTUS, we've talked about endangered species. All of those things are important, but they really get highlighted when you get a bunch of producers that are concerned about what's happening in their backyard.
There was a lot of passion around both of those issues. So I guess as you look forward into the next year, what would you say are 2 or 3 of the key priorities for your year as president?
Well, unfortunately, part of it's going to be throwing those punches, because we're going to have to fight back, and we already are. As we came into this convention, we have weighed in on a lawsuit against the EPA. We've also taken on U.S. Fish and Wildlife in the Endangered Species Act. I anticipate that we're going to continue to get into those things, particularly in the western areas, to try and protect our federal lands. Because somewhere along the line, it appears that the federal land definition has gone away from public, and a certain segment of the population thinks they're theirs. Well, it's time we tell these people that our folks have been there forever, and they are the ones that are truly protecting those federal lands.
And stewarding those lands for generations.
Absolutely.
Yeah. One last question. We don't have time for a complete inaugural address, but what would be 2 or 3 messages you'd want to share as you take the reins as president?
I think the biggest one that I can convey is, let's all get into the fight together. Let's not just stand back and try and get into little corners and not communicate this message. We're about 2% of the population, and I'm adding farmers and ranchers together. And when we split up onto little bitty issues, it seems like we're less effective. So if we can get our entire industry together and get united on the points that we need to be united on, that's how we protect our future generations. Too often we get caught up in these issues, and I worry then about whether my grandchildren are going to be able to do the same thing that I'm doing. So I hope that the producers are going to recognize that and want to protect their future for their generations. And then activism doesn't mean that you have to shout from the mountaintops, but what it does mean is you have to be an advocate. And being an advocate is just critically important. Back where I'm from, the favorite spot to go to is maybe the elevator or the local coffee shop where you complain about issues. Well, complaining doesn't cut the mustard anymore. Now it's up to action.
Well, I've seen you on Fox News and give testimony to Congress. You're a wonderful advocate for the industry. Keep up the good work.
Well, I appreciate it, Kevin. Thank you very much.
To keep up to date on all the issues facing cattlemen and women, and to help make a difference in the industry, why not join Todd as a member of NCBA? It's easy to do. Just call 1-866-233-3872 or visit ncba.org.